What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Dan, and today we're taking the Tesla Model 3 long range on a 1,300 mile road trip. Well, not actually today since we're already at our destination, but I'm going to break down our trip from the Model 3 from a couple days ago. The good, the bad, and the ugly, so let's go. So we're heading from upstate New York to Siesta Key, Florida, just over 1,300 miles in total. The plan was to drive about 14 hours to Florence, South Carolina, and then stay in a hotel overnight, and another 10 hours to our destination the next day in Siesta Key, Florida. Now, before we even get in the car, this brings up one of the biggest differences between an electric car like a Tesla and a regular gas car, where you need to do a little bit more planning ahead of time. The first thing I did was scope out a few of our charging stops ahead of time. I mean, technically you don't have to do this. You could hop in the car, enter your destination in the nav, in the Tesla, and it will definitely get you there, and it won't let you run out of battery. But the navigation in the Tesla doesn't always optimize these charging stops. And by optimize, I mean get the shortest charging time and the fastest charging speeds. In order to do this, you want to be using the battery between 10 and say 60 or 70%. That's where it's going to charge the fastest. The nav in the Tesla wanted us to stop multiple times with 60 to 70% left to charge up to 90% or higher, which is not necessarily the fastest way to go about it. So I used another app called A Better Route Planner, or ABRP for short. This allows a much higher level of control compared to the nav in the Tesla. It will try to keep the charging stops within that optimal charging range. And the other cool thing about ABRP is that you can plug in a time and a type of stop ahead of time. So for example, we wanted to get lunch around noon, and with ABRP, I had it stop and charge around then, and it gave us a couple of options and listed the amenities at each charging stop for us to choose from. So with the charging stops pretty much mapped out, we booked a hotel that was about 14 hours into our trip. This happened to be around Florence, South Carolina, coming from New York since we're taking a multi-day trip. I wanted to make sure there was a destination charger at the hotel so the car could charge up overnight while we were sleeping and be at 100% ready to go the next morning. And it turns out a lot of hotels have these. It's just something you can look on the Tesla website and find, and sometimes on the hotel website they will advertise this as well. They're free and they're slow, but speed is not really important when you're just plugging it in and letting it charge up to 100% overnight. So with the planning out of the way, it was time to head out. The goal for the first day was to do about 14 hours, including our charging stops. Leaving at 6 a.m., we would hit our destination by about 8 p.m. after doing about 750 miles. And everything went to plan, well, mostly. We were able to leave on time at about 6 a.m. and hit our first charging stop about an hour and a half later. This was just a quick 13-minute charge. From there, it was another 180 miles, and we were at our next stop in Pennsylvania. Charging from 20% to 58% in 15 minutes, we're off again, heading to our lunch stop in Maryland. We arrived pretty much on schedule and stopped for 43 minutes to charge up while we got some lunch. And after lunch, we were on the road again and ran into some major traffic around Washington, D.C. This added a ton of time to our trip as we were stuck in traffic for almost 2 hours. And this brings up some other good points about road tripping with a Tesla. First, I really wasn't worried about running out of battery when we were stuck in traffic, since you're only using minimal energy for the heat or the air conditioning, and in our case, air conditioning, since it was almost 90 degrees out at this point. It was a pretty warm spell for this time of the year in March. And second, the adaptive cruise control and the auto steer is an absolute game changer when stuck in stop and go traffic. They both work down to 0 miles per hour, even when the car is stopped. With the autopilot on, it feels like I'm more of a passenger, as I'm not 100% focused on the car in front of me. And I'm not moving my foot between the accelerator or the brake constantly anymore, as the car is handling all of that automatically for me. And it didn't even require that I touch the steering wheel when we were below 10 miles an hour. So I was able to go pretty far without having to even put my hand on the wheel. Obviously, I still have to pay somewhat attention, but it's not that intense and stressful focus that is sometimes required in this type of traffic. And once we were out of traffic, it was mostly smooth sailing. And once we were out of traffic, it was mostly smooth sailing for the rest of the day. We hit 2 more charging stops before reaching our hotel, with the destination charger about 10 p.m., about 2 hours behind schedule from that traffic around Washington, D.C. So day 1, we did 750 miles, stopping to charge 5 times for a total of 118 minutes. And most of those stops, we needed to use the bathroom or get something to eat anyways, so it turned out that we weren't waiting for the car. Usually, the car was waiting for us to finish whatever we were doing. On a typical long trip like this, I'll usually set the nav to whatever my end destination is, and it's just a seemingly never-ending 14-hour countdown in this case. But on the Tesla, I found myself setting the nav to the next supercharger, and this was awesome for 2 reasons. First, it broke up the trip. I'm no longer staring at the huge amount of miles left. I'm seeing 2 to 3 hours to my next destination, which is usually the supercharger. It just seemed way better mentally to break the trip up into these 2 to 3 hour segments. And second, I can see what my estimated battery percentage is upon arrival at the next supercharger. This is good to keep in check just to make sure it's not getting too low. Being my first trip in a Tesla, I was trying to keep our arrival percentage at about 20% remaining when we hit the supercharger. But in good weather going forward, I would feel comfortable moving that to 10 to 15% remaining upon arrival. You'll obviously want to leave a little bit more of a buffer in colder temperatures. Day 2, we were on the road again by about 8 a.m. with a 100% charge thanks to our destination charger at the hotel. We hit a little bit of traffic, but nothing out of the ordinary, and it didn't really set us back at all. We stopped at 2 superchargers for a total of 57 minutes over the course of 550 miles. So over the course of the 2-day trip and 1,300 miles, we spent 2 hours and 55 minutes charging. This is not including the free charge at the hotel overnight. This cost us a total of about $60 USD. We used a total of 355 kilowatts at an average efficiency of about 265 watt hours per mile for the whole trip. This is pretty close to what's advertised by Tesla, and is a little better than I thought we would do. We had both the front and the rear trunks absolutely packed with our luggage. I had myself, my wife, and our daughter in the car, and the AC was running most of the time, as it was usually between 70 to 90 Fahrenheit outside. The other thing I noticed after 2 days of driving is that I wasn't really tired like I normally am. I had the Autopilot on most of the time, and this really removes the mental stress of driving. I'm no longer making those minor steering adjustments to keep myself in the lane, or switching from the accelerator to the brake constantly in traffic. The car does all that for me. And while that doesn't sound like much, after 20 plus hours of driving, that can really add up. And the Autopilot makes it so much more enjoyable. So after owning the car for about a month and a half, this thing has just blown me away. It's an all-around awesome car, from commuting at home to these long road trips. The whole experience has just been great. And if you're thinking about getting a Tesla, feel free to use my promo code down below. We both get 1,000 free supercharging miles when you use this during purchase. So I hope this was helpful and informative. If you have any questions or comments, throw them down below and I'll do my best to answer. So that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.